Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hooded Casual. Today I want to talk about my experience returning to Throne and Liberty after some time away, specifically with the Wilds of Talandre expansion. The goal of this video isn't just to share my thoughts, but also to hear from you, whether you're a returning player or someone who never left. Let me start by saying I love the game, and I really wish it was a little more oriented toward players like me, casual gamers with few to no friends to play with. I totally understand that as an MMO, Throne and Liberty is designed around social and group content, so I know that's a big factor. But still, I've been struggling to enjoy it the way I do with other MMOs like New World or Black Desert. Maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I just need a different approach. I didn't dive super deep into LAT updates, so part of why I'm making this video is to hear from you. Maybe your thoughts and experiences will give me the motivation to give it another shot. So let's go through what's new, what still feels the same, and whether it's worth coming back. Why I initially left. Back in late December, I took a break from the game, at first just for vacation, but when I thought about coming back, I realized that most people had moved on. On top of that, solo content was practically non-existent, and at that point I was just bored of the usual daily routine. The game felt a lot quieter, and to be honest, I wasn't feeling super motivated to jump back in either. The excitement I had during the first few months had started to fade, so I just ended up not playing. Why I came back. Fast forward a few months and I saw the new Wilds of Talandre expansion being advertised, along with a bunch of updates to the weapon mastery system. That got me curious. It felt like the devs had been putting in work, and I wanted to see if it made the game feel fresh again. So I reinstalled Throne and Liberty and logged back in to check it out. First impressions after returning. Right away, I noticed that despite knowing the game well before, I felt kind of lost. Maybe it was the new system changes, maybe it was just not knowing where to pick things up again, but I wasn't sure what to do first. That's something I think a lot of returning players might feel, like even though you know the game, you still have to figure out how to get back into it. Also, one of the things that negatively impacted my returning experience was the new mastery system. Unlike skill specializations, which you can use right away, this new system requires you to gradually unlock masteries using gold and special stones. I get that adding progression can be engaging, but as a returning player, I found it frustrating that I couldn't immediately experiment with the new system. Instead of feeling like an exciting addition, it felt more like another layer of grind before I could actually enjoy it. What's changed since release? To give credit where it's due, the devs have definitely made improvements. The revamped skill system is a big step forward, the game feels more polished, and there's more content now compared to launch. They've added solo dungeons, reworked some progression mechanics, and introduced Nebula Island, a new inter-server area for high-level players. That said, even with all these updates, I personally didn't feel like anything truly pushed me to keep playing, especially because grinding to a point where I could jump back into PvP felt extremely far off. The new content is there, but I wasn't sure if it was enough to keep me engaged long-term. Login rewards for returning players. To be fair, I also want to show you the login rewards given to returning players. During my playthrough, I received a set of rewards designed to help returning players ease back into the game. These included some gold, enhancement materials, and consumables that give you a small boost in catching up. Are they game-changing? Not really, but they're a nice bonus if you decide to return. Let me know in the comments. Do you think these rewards are enough to bring players back, or should they be offering more? A big upside, the visuals and world design. One thing Throne and Liberty absolutely nails is its visuals and open-world design. I still think it's one of the best-looking MMOs out there. The sense of freedom while exploring the massive world is something few games can match. Just walking around and taking in the scenery is a great experience. If you love immersive world building, this game still delivers on that front. Relearning the game and my character. The first thing I did after logging back in was setting up my character again, just enough to be able to grind some mobs and get back into the combat flow. I play as a wand spear user, and it took a little bit of practice to feel comfortable again. The combat still felt pretty solid, but the moment I started looking at progression, I noticed a problem. The grind is still a big issue. I quickly realized that Throne and Liberty still leans heavily into grinding. As a returning player, I felt like I had to grind just to catch up, and even then I was always a step behind. That feeling of never really being on pace with the game makes it hard to stay motivated. Here I want to make a quick comparison. Maybe you can help me understand why I feel this way. I thought about Black Desert Online, which requires even more grinding than Throne and Liberty, but somehow I never felt behind or forced to grind just to catch up. Because of that, I enjoyed BDO more in that sense, even though it's grindier. Not sure why this feeling happens. Maybe you have an idea. And honestly, this might be completely different if you have a group of friends to play with. If you're thinking about returning, I highly recommend bringing a few friends with you. Having a group to go through content together would definitely make the experience feel more enjoyable and motivating. Playing solo, I really felt the emptiness of the world more than I would have if I had a group to run things with. What's next for me in Throne and Liberty? So after everything I've talked about, what's my plan now? For now, I plan to keep playing casually for a while, at least to finish the main story and exploration in the new zones introduced in Wilds of Talandre. There's still a lot I haven't seen, and while I'm not fully convinced to grind long-term, I at least want to experience the PvE content properly and see how much enjoyment I can get from that. As you can see, I don't have a guild right now. That definitely affects my experience, since MMOs tend to be more engaging when you have an active community to play with. Maybe that's something I'll look into later, but for now I'm just taking things at my own pace. One big thing I noticed while playing again is that gear in this game impacts combat way more than in other MMOs I've played. Here in Throne and Liberty, your gear score seems to make an overwhelming difference, to the point where I don't really feel like jumping into PvP anytime soon. Because of that, PvP isn't my focus for now. I'm going to try to enjoy the new PvE content as much as I can, exploring the new areas, testing different encounters, and seeing if the world still has that immersive feel I remember from launch. That being said, I'm still keeping an eye on how Wandspear performs in PvP, just in case I decide to dip into it later. Monetization. Has anything changed? So let's talk about monetization. To me, it feels like nothing has really changed. The system is still pretty much the same as before. You can spend money to speed things up, trade for gear, and get ahead faster, but it's not outright pay to win since you still have to enhance and optimize your setup like everyone else. For free-to-play players, progress is slower, but still possible if you're willing to grind. Gear still plays a huge role in combat, and that hasn't changed, especially in PvP, where better gear gives a clear advantage. If you're not willing to grind hard or spend money, you're probably going to feel that gap. In the past, I never felt like I had to spend money to hold my ground in PvP, but after taking a long break, catching up to other players now feels almost impossible as a free-to-play player. The gap feels wider than before, and that's definitely something that could turn people away. That said, I'm not fully aware of every small monetization change, so maybe someone who's been keeping track can share more details in the comments. What do you think? Has monetization changed at all, or does it still feel the same? Do you think it impacts gameplay more now compared to before? Let me know what you think. Is it worth coming back? So, after all this, would I recommend returning to Throne and Liberty? It depends. If you loved the game before and just want to check out the new content, then sure, there's definitely new stuff to explore. But if you are hoping for a massive revival or major changes to the core gameplay, you might be disappointed. The game still has some of the best visuals and world design in any MMO, but progression still feels like a grind, and the world doesn't feel as alive as it did in the early months. If you're okay with that, you might still enjoy it. If not, you might find yourself in the same spot I did, appreciating the improvements but not feeling truly pulled back in. Final thoughts. I want to hear from you. I was really hoping that Talandre would bring new energy to the game, but for me it mostly made me nostalgic for the early days, when the world felt fresh, active, and exciting. But now I want to hear from you. Have you tried coming back for the newest expansion? How did you feel about it? Did it pull you back in, or do you feel like something's still missing? I'd really appreciate hearing your thoughts because, as much as I love Throne and Liberty, I'm struggling to enjoy it in a more casual way like I usually do with MMOs. Maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I just need a different approach. If you've been in the same situation, let me know. Maybe you have a suggestion for me, or maybe you just feel the same way. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to reading your comments.